Okay, greetings and peace, everyone. My name is Neo, and I'm here to give some info. All right, this is another episode of my YouTube relationship series. And my YouTube relationship series, what it is I will break down a movie or anything else that the average person is able to see or grab a hold of and read or whatever it is. And usually it's movies, but I'll break it down, and I'll break it down to the relationship from the relationship perspective, so that people can receive all of the insights from my years of studying, investigating, and observing human relationships. Because one of my titles, one of the things that I do is as a human relationship anatomist, is exactly that. I study, examine, and observe and really investigate human relationships. That includes the families, friends, and romantic relationships. And this started back this started back in, I think, like between 2009, probably about 2009, where I had one of my breakups with a woman that I really was into at the time. And there were so many signs upon speaking with her early on that she had psychological issues. But me at the time not having the information that I have now, I bypassed all of that. And then in the end, she realized that it was best that we be friends. And then at the end of that, I sat down and said to myself, okay, wait a minute. What do I want to do next? And then I said, okay, well, maybe I'll go to the next woman, the next relationship. And that's what the average person actually does. But I'll go into that another time. And then while sitting there by myself, I heard a voice, like literally a thought came through, in which that's the spiritual side of us, but the spiritual side of me came through and said, what makes you think that you're ready for another relationship? Literally, loud and clear, a telepathic information question came through like that. So I said to myself, like, wait a minute, yeah, that is true. I never really thought about that because nobody ever taught me. And I was like, yeah. And then ever since then, I just started to focus on studying. Then I kept rising spiritually and psychologically to higher levels, to where I was able to perceive my intuition at a very high level. So now a lot of my information that I received regarding human relationships came intuitively by looking at a variety of movies, because there's a lot of information in the movies and you can decode it once you get on a high mental level. Spending time with couples, spending time with, of course, my family, examining my family. That was my first experience as far as my training ground to see what's really going on. And then asking questions with couples and spending time with couples, whether I knew them or not. And even the ones that I didn't know, I would just be at a distance and just observing them, spending time with each other. And then boom, I would just get information. And then here I'm sharing information with my relationship series here on YouTube. So that's that. Okay, so now that that's out of the way, now the movie that we have here today, the second movie, because the first movie was the Temptation movie. If you have not heard that relationship series, that was my first one. Go back and check that out whenever you can. It's the relationship breakdown of the movie, the Tyler Perry's movie, Temptation. So go ahead and check that out on my YouTube channel. So this movie right here that I'm about to break down for you is the movie titled Carnage, C.R.N.A.G.E, Carnage. And it's a movie with Jodie Foster, Kate Winslet, Waltz, Waltz, and John C. Reilly. John C. Reilly is the crazy dude, the crazy comedian, the nutso, the funny dude. He is funny, but once you get to a certain level spiritually and psychologically, it's kind of stupid, mundane human jokes that he has. So after a while, I was like, all right, now I don't really like his jokes. It's kind of stupid. But that's just me. But sometimes he can come through with some really, really funny stuff. And in this movie, he did say some funny stuff, some funny things. And I will mention that this is a spoiler. So if you have not seen this movie at all, I advise you to stop listening to this audio right now until you go ahead and watch this movie, and watch the trailer first to see if you're interested in it and seeing the movie. If you're not, then that's okay, because you can still get relationship information through this audio, because I still have information that's regarding relationships. So that's really your choice. If you have seen it already, unless you remember it vividly, I advise you to go ahead and just revise watching it, whether it be briefly or just watch the whole thing again. But here we go. So the storylines is you got two young boys, and I have notes right here, so you'll hear my paper moving back and forth. Two young boys get into an argument, and they're at a playground, and then one of them hits the other in the face with a stick or a bat of some sort. And then after it all, the parents of the victim who got hit, they invite the parents of the assaultant, the bully, the one who did the assault, who the one who hit him in the face. They brought him to their home to work things out. And then the whole movie, they're in the house discussing and arguing about the whole situation. This, to me, in my opinion, is a movie of parental differences, among other things. It's parental differences, yeah, but you have a lot of other things within the movie. Okay, and now Jodie Foster, her character, she plays Penelope. And Penelope is the peaceful, we are the world, we are all one intellect, the mother of the victim, the one who got hit. You know, she's one of those people, I'm a vegetarian and I care about animals, I care about plant life, I care about taking care of the kids in Africa. You know, those type of people, which then they're not bad, but it's just the way that they go about things is kind of awkward to a lot of people. That's what I'll say, to a lot of people. And I'll go into how these are just projections that all of these characters portray. I'll talk about that later. Then you have Kate Winslet. Kate Winslet is a investment broker, and she's a wife, the wife of the guy that I'm about to mention next, but she plays Nancy. Her character name is Nancy. All right, and then we have Christoph Waltz. He plays an attorney who is heavily involved in his work. He is pretty much a deadbeat dad and a deadbeat husband. And he plays Alan. Alan and Nancy are married. Them two are married. Okay, then we have John C. Reilly. He plays Penelope's comedic and very immature husband, Michael. Michael is his name. All right, so we're going to go into a few notes. All right, so what I'm going to do is, this is mostly audio, but at the same time, I'm going to put some video of, not video, but some images up in the video. So for right now, I'm going to start off with some of my definitions of social awareness, ego-driven, and let's see here. What's the other one? The divine spiritual self, maturity, and immaturity. So take the time to read each of these right now. Pause the video if you have to, read them through, and then it'll better help you comprehend all of my examples of what I'm going to say later on in this audio. Check that out. Throughout this audio, I'm going to talk to you about the various examples in the movie that shows various things, and also I'm going to give you the my recommendation of how it should have resulted on a mature adult level. And throughout this movie, examples of both low level of social awareness and a high level of immaturity has been shown. Literally, if you haven't picked that up by now, then I don't know what's going on with you, but there's a lot of immaturity in this film and a lot of low level of social awareness. And if you read that my definition of social awareness, you know that you can really see this all in the film right now. Now let me see here. I have here Penelope. Gotta get written down. Penelope and Michael failing to be aware of Alan's and Nancy's disinterest in wanting to meet with them and the disinterest in their own children. They are lightly aware, but kept Alan and Nancy in their home. So what I mean by here is early on in the movie, you can see intuitively that Nancy and Alan, they don't want to be there. They still kept their coats on. They was ready and prepared to leave, but some way, somehow, Alan and Nancy stayed in the home of Penelope and Michael. They just stayed stuck there. Somehow they just kept coming in. They would leave for a little bit and then they just kept coming in. Leave a little bit, they kept coming in. So Penelope and Michael were really mature, and they were psychologically and emotionally balanced, which they are not in this film. If they were, and if they were able to perceive their intuition, they would be able to perceive that, okay, Alan and Nancy, they really don't want to be here, so let's do what we got to do and get them out. Or if they really feel that, as I did, they feel that Alan and Nancy, they are very, very immature and they don't really care about the situation. So we got to go ahead and handle this on our own, by ourselves, with our own child, and then just get the hell on with it. But guess what Penelope and Michael did? They still kept doing immature things and making immature decisions. Another example of a low level of social awareness is Penelope. She knocked on the bathroom door while Alan was inside it. You remember after Kate, not Kate, but after Nancy, she threw up, and it got onto Alan's pants. You remember? And then she spit all on the magazines on the table and spit everywhere, and it splashed onto Alan's pants. So what he did, he went to the bathroom to go ahead clean it off, and then he wanted to dry it off. So you got Penelope. She knocked on a door while he was in there, and she already knew that the dude was in there a long time ago. Not a long time ago, but just a few minutes ago. It only happened in only a few minutes. I would say maybe 2 or 3 minutes, where he said that he was going to the bathroom to clean it up. So, and I think one of them suggested that he go to the bathroom and clean it up, something like that. So she knocked on it. After she knocked, after she knocked once, and knowing he was in there, she still opened the door and walked in, grabbed whatever she needed to grab, and then moved out of the bathroom. In the meantime, Alan is sitting there looking at her like, what the fuck? Are you serious? And which I would too. I would be looking at her like, what? Are you serious? And apparently either she didn't have a lock in the bathroom or he forgot. But if she did have a lock, what I would have did is I would have locked it anyways. But on Penelope's part, she had a low level of social awareness. And I personally feel that she had a lot of psychological issues. And that's why she didn't even, number one, perceive that he was there. And number two, if she did perceive that he was there, then she would have been shocked and be like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. And even if she opened the door and saw that he was there, she would have stepped back and be like, oh, okay, sorry about that. But nothing appeared to her that Alan was still in there and had his pants off. She just went in completely numb and oblivious, just grabbed what she needed to grab as if he was not even there, and walked the hell out. But now, as a mature adult, this all becomes common sense. Like literally, you already know that once you knock on a door, well, first you would remember that he walked into the bathroom. And you just wait till he get out, or knock on the door, see if he's there, ask him, Alan, are you still in there? And if he says yes, boom, tell him, all right, can you let me know when you're out? Or you'll obviously see him when he comes out, and you just wait for him to come out, and then you grab what you need to grab, and you respect his privacy overall. So that is the result of low awareness as far as put on Penelope's part, and then the result of the mature adult is to knock on the door, see if the person is in there. Once they say that they're in there, then ask them, can they let you know when they're out? And then you go ahead and take care of your business. So, in other words, avoid doing what Penelope did. Okay, I got an example of immaturity, which there's tons of examples of immaturity, but I'm just going to point out just a few of them here. You got Michael and the hamster. Michael and the hamster, this dude Michael has gotten really ridiculous for even mentioning it. And Penelope, I think Penelope was the first one who mentioned it. But to even go into detail talking about the situation, I feel like that was a very immature thing to do, because it had nothing to do with the situation with their sons. So as a mature adult, I know what I would have done is I would be like, okay, look, Penelope, that really doesn't have anything to do with this situation. Alan and Nancy are ready to leave, so let's let them leave. Alan and Nancy, it was nice meeting you, and take care. And then boom, that was it. That's what a mature adult needs to do and should have done. But this dude, Michael, he went into detail about what he did with the hamster. And if you haven't seen the movie, I'll just let you go ahead and listen to the movie. But I think that was really stupid of what he did anyways, both speaking about it and doing what he did. So the other immature example is Nancy. She brought it up again later on in the film. Her bringing it on, bringing the experience, the story, or what happened with Michael and the hamster, bringing it up again is another example of immaturity. Nancy realized that she had nothing on Michael, and throughout the film, they really didn't have that much of a hatred toward each other. She was shocked at first from the story of what Michael mentioned, but after a certain period of time, she just let it go. She didn't speak about it, at least she didn't speak about it. But her being an immature person, she felt like she had nothing else on Michael to argue with. So she brought this stupid, immature hamster story up again with Michael. And then now you have Michael and Nancy arguing like two kids in elementary school and sometimes in high school, because these high school kids are really, really highly immature, even more. And that's because they have immature parents. And that's one of the biggest issues that's been going on for years. Is the reason why there are still immature people is because they were raised by immature, highly unstable, psychologically and emotionally unstable parents. And the child never came into their own to do self-reflection and self-development so that they can resolve their unresolved childhood issues. And that's what's going on with a lot of people, is they still have unresolved childhood issues, and that highly affects their relationships. All of those issues pop up within their relationships, and then they try to distract themselves, and they so-called, we got over that issue. When in reality, the average couple, what they'll do is they'll just find ways to distract themselves and each other and move on and sweep everything under the rug and never get down to the bottom, the root of the problem. And then they just move on, go to dinner, go to a movie, buy each other gifts, some other distraction to just gloss over the overall issue. And then later on things just get worse, and then they get a divorce or they break up, something like that. So that's a recurring thing that I've seen throughout my study and observation of relationships. So that's one immaturity example from in the movie. The other one was, you remember when Michael, he was like hanging on, like in a doorway. His back was like on a doorway, and then Alan was closer to the window. And I think he just got done talking on the phone. Yeah, he just got done talking on the phone. And then what Michael did was, he was talking about Alan's job being an odd job. An odd job. This is a example of immaturity and lack of social awareness on Michael's part. And being an attorney, that was an odd job to Michael, from Michael's perspective. And what you want to do is, as far as having a high level of social awareness and maturity as a person, you never want to talk about another person's job being odd unless the other person says it themselves. Because some people, they really adore and they really are highly attached to their job, their career. And to them, it's not an odd job. To them, they really love it. But to hear it from another person's perspective and another person say it, the average person is not aware of their ego self versus their spiritual self. So they're in ego mode, and it's their ego that gets assaulted by other people's statements. And this is an example right here. This is what happened when Michael mentioned it to Alan. And the moment Michael mentioned it to Alan, that's when I said, oh boy, here we go. And I knew that he set an alarm off in Alan's head, because Alan is highly ego driven and he is highly materialistic and greedy. So he's one of the people where they're into their career and they're into luxury. Their luxury becomes a necessity, and they're highly into their comfort zone, and they don't want to perceive anything outside of that. So when someone says something against their comfort zone and their overall belief system, that's when all hell breaks loose. They're like, oh, and they feel threatened, and they're ready to attack, whether it be verbally or physically. And this is a situation right here with Alan. He steps up to Michael's face, and then it starts to attack Michael's job and what he does for his way to make money for himself. So that's another example of immaturity and a low social awareness level on both ends right then and there. So for Michael, the mature adult thing to do is he shouldn't have even mentioned Alan's job at all. For me, coming from my point of view, being able to perceive Alan's personality overall early on in the movie, what I would have done is I would have stayed away from mentioning Alan's job overall, unless I just wanted to get him to talk and to, just have small talk. I would do it where I would just ask Alan questions just to get him to talk about his job and to overall open up. Yeah, open up, because people, when they're in their ego, they enjoy speaking about themselves. Highly egoic people, they love speaking about themselves, and they rarely care about listening to other people speak about themselves at all. So me knowing that, I would just go ahead and just allow Alan to just talk about himself, and that's it. And I would avoid speaking about myself and avoid speaking negatively about Alan at all, because anything speaking about Alan, even in the slightest thing, and looking at him, he's on a high egotistical level, it would just set him off, as you can see in the film. So that's that. The other example of immaturity and a low level of social awareness is Alan and his cell phone usage. Do you remember in the movie how often this dude Alan was on his cell phone? It is ridiculous. He was on his cell phone way too much. The first time I saw him use his cell phone, I was like, all right, well, that's a real immature thing to do, to literally answer your cell phone inside the house during this important moment. If it wasn't important to Alan and Nancy, then they have to perceive that it's important to the other parents. And then what he could have did is, on a mature level, is take the phone call outside of the home. And that's really what I was expecting Alan to do. Once I saw that, and then I saw the second and third time that he was taking calls inside the home and literally speaking out loud without even whispering, that's when I realized, I was like, okay, this is an immature guy, and he's going to be immature the rest of the movie. So as a mature adult, a mature person that has a high level of social awareness, what you need to do is, if you have to take a very important call, take it outside of the room or away from the situation and speak to whoever it is privately. If you literally absolutely can't go anywhere else, then you speak as low as possible in the situation so that you don't interrupt anything else that's going on. But especially if you got something highly important going on already and then you get a phone call, overall the most effective and wise decision to take is to just take the phone call outside of the situation. Just go outside, away from it, the best way possible. And it's sad that I actually have to say this, but there's a lot of adults who don't think this way, and they can't perceive even going away to speak on their phone away from the important situation. It's just, even if the situation is not important, if you have a phone call that you know is going to have private information, it's best to move away. And some people don't even want to hear your cell phone conversation in general, so it's best to just move away. That's all. And then you have the cell phone in the water scene. Do you remember that scene where Nancy, she got fed up, and it took her being drunk, having to get drunk in order for her to stand up and say, look, I'm tired of this. And then she just threw his cell phone into the water. And you can see throughout the movie, she got pissed off that he was still on his phone when he needs to have his head inside the home to discuss the matter at hand. But he kept being on his phone and she kept getting pissed. But she threw his cell phone into the water. And did you see how seriously this guy got when that happened, and how he pouted? He pouted for a good amount of time, like a little kid whose mommy took his toy away. And this guy is what, maybe like 50, 60 years old at that, something like that. And he's pouting because his phone was thrown in the water. I mean, I can understand how his phone is important to him because of his job. But at the same time, he got to really think about his wife. And his wife got fed up. If he was really mature and he was conscious, he would have perceived like, okay, my wife really is angry at me speaking on the phone, so I'm going to just put all my calls on hold or turn off my phone and get to the phone calls later. And then he wouldn't have this problem. But he allowed everything to fester up, and that's the result. And he pouted like a big baby, and that's how a lot of adults react to a lot of things that they perceive as very valuable. But if they were mature, they can prevent all of these disasters and these stressful times by thinking wisely. But a lot of so-called mature adults, they don't think wisely. And that's one thing I really want to convey to people. Once I did my own self-reflection and self-development, self-reflection and self-development is really taking the time to look at yourself, stepping outside of your ego to look at yourself and admit all of your faults, all of the things that you need to work on, and admit all of the things that your parents have done to you, your caretakers, your brothers, your sisters, your cousins. Observe all of those things from an observation standpoint. Look at them. Don't be scared to go through the experience again through your head, and then figure out and say to yourself, all right, what is the next thing for me to do to develop myself into a higher state of being? So that you can avoid doing what the average person does, is they'll they'll accept the social programming. The social programming says that to be an adult, you have to have your own place of living, your own job or financial income, have a car, and then you pay your bills. And then people think that, oh, okay, I'm an adult. And that's it. No. Being a mature adult is a psychological and emotional situation. You have to be on a mature level psychologically and emotionally in order to be considered mature. For me, I wasn't able to perceive and really comprehend this until I did my own inner work to raise myself up beyond my level that I was on within my 20s and mid-20s. So it took me probably, the closer I got to 30, the higher my maturity level raised and the higher my consciousness level raised overall. And then while doing my studying, that's when I realized, like, oh, wow. So the majority of so-called adults, they're not mature. And then I was able to perceive, like through perceiving the movies, the magazines, the various magazines, the TV shows, and really observing adults in general, that the majority of so-called adults, they're not mature. They're immature. And that's when I was able to perceive that the majority of my family are still on an immature level, and my mother and father are still on that level also. Then when I saw that my mother and father were that way, that's when I realized, okay, I can let go of all of the negative things that they said to me and all of the things that I expected from them but did not get it from them. Because my father completely left my life at 16, and my mother, she was predominantly so focused on what happened to her from her father, what her situation with her father not being there, and she didn't really know that, and that was a repressed memory and issue. So that affected her situation with my father as a relationship with him. They divorced, and then she moved on with focusing on her job so that she can support us as her children. But then she had to deal with my sisters, my older sisters, with their situation and not having a father around. It was just a big, huge mess. And once I was able to have mental clarity, I was able to perceive all of this. I'm like, oh, wow. And then it all made sense. So then I realized I need to just separate myself from my family and continue to focus on myself to get myself grounded. And that's what I advise a lot of people, everybody, to do so that they can be on a higher maturity level. So in other words, just because you have your own car, your own money, your own bank account, you pay your bills, and you have your own place of living, that does not mean that you are mature at all. No, it doesn't. There's some 14-year-olds that I've seen who are way more mature than a 30, a 40, 50, 60, and 70-year-old person. And there are a lot of immature and babies, psychologically babies, who are in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s and beyond. So you got to focus on yourself, get yourself together. And this situation right here, this movie, shows that you can be beyond your teenage years and still be immature. Okay, now I'm going to talk to you about teamwork. From the insights that I have obtained regarding my study and observation and investigation of relationships, is teamwork is highly essential if you want successful relationships within your own life. If a person wants successful relationships, teamwork in relationships is very similar to a team in sports. A lot of people really don't perceive this and really comprehend this. Teamwork meaning sticking together, discussing each other's issues that you have, rather than sweeping them under the rug or just trying to distract yourself to avoid any issues that you have with each other. And as a family and as a couple, it's important to discuss the issues that you have with each other rather than argue with each other about the issues. Discussing issues helps everyone get to the bottom of the issue. First, you bring it to each other's consciousness, like, look, I'm having an issue with this, and this because this, and this occurs. So I would like to sit down and speak to you about this so that we can figure out how we can work this out. And then listen from a mature aspect, open-minded and open-hearted. And that's the biggest reason why a lot of people can't discuss each other's issues, is because both of them are in ego mode. Ego mode is when everything is about me, you don't want to hear what the other person has to say. And even when you do really listen to what the other person has to say, if you're in ego mode, you get assaulted. You feel threatened. Overall, you feel threatened. So you got to step to the side of your ego and say, okay, wait, I'm going to let this go. Whatever they say, I'm going to avoid getting assaulted. I'm going to clearly listen to what they have to say. And even if I feel assaulted, I'm going to brush it off and really try to see things from their point of view. And this is what I see a lot in a lot of families. And this occurs a lot in my family as far as being hurt by other people's concerns. Even when a person tiptoes around the issue and discussing it, conveying how they feel, and they do it in a mature way, the other person gets offended. That occurs a lot in my family. But for me, once I got to my higher level, I realized that you got to discuss it in a mature manner, and everyone has to be open-minded, open-hearted, and put all of their feelings of threat to the side so that you can get to the bottom of the issue. That's that. But now in this movie, there's a lot of blaming going on, pointing fingers. That is a sign of immaturity. When people blame others and they point fingers and they avoid taking on accountability at all, even if it's a little bit, that's a high sign of immaturity. So that's what I recommend everyone do, is find a time to sit down with each other to discuss each other's issues. One tactic that I have came up with and thought about to involving teamwork and improving the issues is I recommend that a family, or even a couple, or if you have both, you're a couple and you have a family, is having at least one family meeting a month. One family meeting a month, and then one couple meeting a month. So you have 2 meetings, one for the family and one as a couple, so that you can both see things from each other's point of view and really discuss things person to person, or even as a group or whatever, and you can get to the root of the problem. And you have to do it open-heartedly and open-eared, or really listen from your heart and see things from their point of view. That way you can get to the bottom of it, and then things can be resolved. The issues can be resolved and be resolved ahead of time before things fester up. But that's one of the biggest issues that people have, is they don't sit down and speak with each other one-on-one, and they don't have a open line of communication, and it's not secure between the team, between the relationships. You have to have an open line of communication for everyone within your family, and it has to be a secure line. Secure meaning avoiding outside influences from infiltrating your family and your line and disrupting your whole family. And there's a lot of outside influences that disrupt families and relationships overall. So you gotta think about that, and that's what I recommend. But you can go ahead and take that model and then build on it. It's just something to think about. Okay, now we can go into what I was talking about earlier as far as projections. Whenever things intensify, it becomes more and more difficult for the average person to maintain their projections unless they are highly trained to do so. So what I mean by projections is the average person, when they come across one or more people, what they do is, and this comes from my intuition, this comes from intuitively seeing what's going on with people and really observing and getting to the heart of things. So the average person, in particular when they're in ego mode, what they do is, in order to prevent other people from perceiving how they truly are as a person, psychologically, emotionally, and spiritually, what they do is they create a projection, and then they display that projection to the outside world to display what they want the outside world to perceive them as, rather than perceive them as they truly are. So it's like a hologram, a psychological hologram that they put in front of people so that they can block out how they truly are. But if you're a person who are on a higher psychological level and spiritual level, and you can perceive your intuition and your other higher mental faculties, you can literally perceive beyond this projection, and you can see how they truly are as a person, and you can perceive their projection. You can see both what's going on. And for me, once I realized that, I laughed at it, and then I was like, oh, okay, this is what really going on. So what happens is they can hold that projection for a certain amount of time, the average person, but then once things intensify, that's when that projection starts to fade out, like a hologram. You know, if you don't know what a hologram is a artificial image that is portrayed in front of a person so that a message of some sort can come through. Like, think Star Wars. Star Wars is really, really good at projecting holograms. They show that in all of their movies. Just about all of their movies is the hologram. It comes from R2-D2, and it comes from a variety of devices. It's that blue light that beams out some kind of image. That's a hologram. So the average person, they'll keep that projection up, that projection of behavior up for as long as possible, and it usually fades out when situations intensify for that person. As you can see here in this movie, Penelope, Michael, Alan, and Nancy, once things intensified, that's when their projections of, oh, hi, everything is okay, yeah, we are the world, you know what I mean? That's when their projections start to come down gradually until all the way down completely. Let me give you an example. If you really think about Penelope early on in the movie, she was all, oh, hi, yeah, okay, yeah, I take care of, I'm really concerned about people in Africa, this, and that. Oh, I'm into art, and I cook, I do this, I do that. And I'm really concerned about my son, he got hit by your son, and yada, yada, yada. You know, she was in this happy-go-lucky mood where she was trying to display her intelligence also. That's another thing that people do when they're in their ego. They want to express their intelligence. Some of them who are on a high egotistical level, they work extra hard to show how intelligent they are. So overall, early in the movie, that was her projection. That was all of their projections early in the movie. But once Penelope realized that she was not going to get her way, which is when she was in ego mode, everybody wants to get their way and it's all about them. That's when her projection started to lower and lower and lower to where she started to even swear. She started to curse. And then her we are the world behavior started to change, and her we are the world language started to change too. Her personality was just like a whole nother person, completely new person. And who she showed once she did not get her way, that was the real person. And I'm telling you, throughout my years, in a minimum of 6 years or longer study, investigation, and observation of this is how the average person is. They put out projections. And then the real person is the person who has the unresolved childhood issues. That's the person that they don't want people to see. But if you really, really take your time and you got your intuition up, you can perceive this. You can perceive who they really are and who they don't want you to see. But the best way to see who a person really is to see how they react within an intensified situation. In particular, when they don't get their way. Look and see how they respond, and then you'll be able to see who they really are and if they're really mature. So that's projections. Take the time and see what I'm talking about, both in the movie and anywhere in your own life. In reality, you can see what I'm talking about. You'll be able to see it. So take time out for that. The other thing is I have written down is to pay attention to a person's occupation. What I mean by this, if you are considering a relationship with any kind of relationship with a person, especially a intimate romantic relationship, I highly recommend, and this movie made me realize this, I highly recommend that you consider what occupation they have. What I mean by this, if a person has an occupation that requires a large amount of their time, then they're more than likely not going to be able to have time to spend romantically with you and really get on intimate levels with you as a person within the relationship. And if it's not an intimate romantic relationship that you want, it's still, if you have a relationship where you require a large amount of time with that other person, then more than likely a person who has an occupation that requires a lot of their time, I don't recommend getting involved with them at all. So it really is something to really consider. As you can see in this movie with Alan and Nancy, he was highly into his attorney career, or whatever career that was. I know it was something with law. He really wasn't into his wife or his kids. He was obsessed with his job. So that's what you got to consider. Like, look, either I want a great relationship or I want a half-assed relationship and a terrible one. So that's something to really think about. So overall, to sum it all up, this is a great movie that displays immaturity. And if you're not a person who's conscious, who has a high level of social awareness, and who's on a high mature level, subliminally, this movie programs you subliminally to act this way. And that's what a lot of movies have been doing for years. A lot of the controllers of society have been creating these movies to program people, to keep them on a lower human level where they start acting like kids and arguing over stupid, mundane things, so that they aren't on a high mature level and being able to handle situations by themselves. And this is the reason why the cops were, the police were invented. Police, you got counselors, and you got a lot of other people, a lot of other organizations to help other people, so to speak. But really, these situations weren't needed centuries ago, because we all were one. We all were one with our Creator. We didn't need temples. We didn't need churches, organizations to help us perceive things on higher levels. We were all highly psychic. We all were one with each other. We were all one unit as a team, a village, helping each other out. We didn't need cops because we were mature. But as the years went on, progressed, we started to decaying because of the outside forces controlling and separating these villages. You can go back in history and see all of this for yourself. But that's how things were. So for me, I'm happy that I saw this movie, because I can break down how to be on a high mature level, and I can bring these insights to people who haven't been able to perceive these things at all. So hopefully this helped you in some sort, one way or another. If you weren't able to perceive a lot and really comprehend a lot of what was in this audio, this video, I highly recommend that you listen to this either the next day or at a later date. Listen to it again, and you might have a totally new perspective on this, and you might recognize things that you didn't recognize that I already said. So just go ahead and listen to it. And also, what I want you to do is share this link with anybody you know who might be interested in this and who might need to listen to this. But ask them first if you really enjoyed this and if it was a benefit to you, and you feel that it might be a benefit to them. But don't just barge in and say, here, listen to this, blah, 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 blah. You're overstepping your boundaries. So you speak to them about it and then ask them, would you like to hear it? If they say no, then just leave them alone regarding that. That's the mature thing to do. All right. Until next time, like, comment, subscribe, and then I'm going to give you the next one. I don't know when I'm going to give you the next one, but I know I have another one already written down. I started it, another relationship lecture series, but I got a few more things to finish up to figure out how I want to present this. Till next time, peace out.